After a car accident left me with amnesia, a woman claiming to be my girlfriend proposed to me in the most heartfelt way. Everyone around me said I'd been waiting for this moment for 7 whole years and urged me to just say yes. In my past life, I nodded along without thinking twice. Her childhood best friend, who turned out to be the long-lost biological son of my parents, ended up going with them to Neller City, and completely leapfrogged into a whole new social class. As for me, I followed Estelle Camden back to her hometown and became just some ordinary guy from the countryside. Cooking, doing laundry, taking care of her bedridden father, I did it all, for 30 years straight. But Estelle left to find work in the city just a year after we got married, and she'd only come back once every few years. The money she sent was barely enough to keep a beggar going. It wasn't until I lay wasted away on my deathbed, barely clinging to life, that I finally saw the truth in her cold, calculating eyes. She let out a sigh of relief and confessed, the couple who came looking for their child back then, they were your real parents. They're worth hundreds of millions. But you? You're so ordinary, what right did you have to that kind of life? So I gave the DNA test to Derek instead. Derek is handsome and clever. He deserves the good life way more than you do. When she saw the rage burning in my eyes, she just gave a careless little smile. You know, sometimes I actually felt guilty looking at you. But now, you're finally about to die, so I guess that's one less thing weighing on my conscience. Right after she said that, I coughed up a mouthful of blood and died, seething with regret. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in that hospital bed, and Estelle was asking me to marry her. Nick. Snap out of it, just say yes already. My friends were egging me on, all of them saying I'd waited 7 years for this moment and to just say yes. I looked at the scene unfolding in front of me, so painfully familiar, and shuddered. It all came rushing back. I'd really been given a second chance. In my past life, my biological parents had come to the orphanage and run DNA tests on several of the men growing up there. But right as the results came out, I got into that accident. When I woke up, the head trauma had wiped my memory, and I'd nodded along like an idiot when Estelle proposed. Not long after, she rushed me back to her hometown. Looking back now, I realized she was terrified I'd regain my memory and ruin the scheme she'd so carefully orchestrated for Derek. What a devoted woman. I bit down hard on my tongue, my stomach churning with disgust. When I didn't answer, Estelle jumped in. Nick, I know you're over the moon. You don't have to say it, I understand. She grabbed the ring and shoved it onto my finger before I could react. The ring was clearly too small, cheap, outdated. She must have grabbed it from some street vendor in a hurry. She didn't care that my face was twisted in pain, just kept forcing it on. Enough. I pulled my hand back coldly. The ring clattered to the floor with a sharp clink. As everyone stared in shock, I looked Estelle in the eye and said, word for word, I don't know you. Please leave. Estelle's face stiffened. Her eyes went red as she grabbed me again. Nick, I know you don't remember, but we've been together for 7 years. I'm your only family. I'm the one you love most. You can trust me. She put on this lovesick act, and to everyone watching, she looked like the perfect, devoted partner. That just made me look like the ungrateful one. In their eyes, I was an orphan from a group home, poor, uneducated. Estelle might not have been rich, but she was pretty and responsible. By any measure, I was the one getting lucky. But in this second chance, I remembered everything. Every humiliating detail of those 7 years. For 7 years, I did all her laundry, right down to her socks and underwear. She never let me eat out. The few times I did, it was leftovers from meals she'd had with her friends. The apartment we shared was cheap and cramped. To save money, I even bathed in water she'd already used. Now I had to wonder, was it really about saving a few bucks? No. It was that Estelle looked down on me from the bottom of her heart. She thought I didn't deserve better. So she stripped away my basic human dignity. She said I had no parents. She said I was ordinary and broke. She said I should be grateful because a woman like her, with her looks and prospects, was a gift to someone like me. And that was why, after the accident, she swapped out my DNA test. Even if you did make it back to Neller City, someone as mediocre as you would just end up getting laughed at. I was doing you a favor. That was what Estelle Camden had the nerve to say on my deathbed in my past life, still going on and on, trying to ease what little guilt she had by pinning all the blame on me. It made my blood boil so badly I died with my eyes wide open, choked with fury. Just looking at someone that selfish made me sick. You know, I just woke up. Why are you pushing me like this? If you really cared about me, wouldn't you wait until my memory came back before bringing any of this up? The moment my calm, even voice trailed off, Estelle froze in sheer shock. She furrowed her brow at me like I was some disobedient dog that had just snapped at its owner. Suddenly, Derek Willis reached over and took my hand, putting on a concerned front. Nick, you made it through the accident, Estelle's just happy. She knows all you've ever wanted is a family, so she proposed right away. Everyone can see you two make a perfect couple. If you don't believe me, just check the photos on your phone. Hearing that, I almost laughed out loud. Derek had to be the most desperate one here right now. We'd grown up together in the same orphanage, but he always thought he was better than me in every way. Whenever someone gave me something, it would mysteriously disappear the next day, and sure enough, it'd show up on him soon after. In my previous life, after he stole my identity, he actually came back to visit. He pulled up in a luxury sports car, his skin no longer rough and dark like before but fair and glowing. Meanwhile, I stood there in heavy, worn-out clothes, my chapped lips parting as I tried to greet him. But Derek recoiled like I was carrying some deadly plague. "Nick, how did you get so old? Estelle was really unlucky to end up with you." That was just 2 months after I'd been discharged from the hospital. I had no one to take care of me and still had to cook for myself. Between the physical and mental toll, I was barely holding it together. So I looked at Estelle, hoping she'd say something, anything, to ease the pain. But instead, she glanced at Derek and smiled. "How could you compare to him? You're a rich heir now. He's just a country bumpkin, this is his lot in life." But now I knew the truth. This was never supposed to be my fate. The two of them had fed on me like parasites, gorging themselves until they were plump and satisfied. Not this time. Never again. I coldly pulled my hand away and replied flatly, "I don't know you either. Please leave, I need to rest." Derek's hand hung frozen in midair, and for a split second, a vicious glint flickered in his eyes. But he kept himself in check and forced a smile. "All right, then, get some rest." Estelle looked like she wanted to argue, but Derek pulled her away. The others said their goodbyes and filed out after them. I finally let out a breath. The wound on my head was still throbbing, and before long, I drifted off to sleep. When I woke up again, it was already the next day. I remembered the DNA test report and immediately went downstairs to pick it up. But the nurse gave me a confused look. That was already picked up, for Nick Dalton. I froze on the spot. Estelle. My mind instantly put the pieces together. My parents were flying back tomorrow, they couldn't even wait one more day. They'd already taken my report. I spent the whole walk back to the ward turning it over in my mind. When I got there, Estelle was waiting for me at the door. "Where did you go?" I dodged her hand as she reached for me and asked flatly, "You took my DNA test results, didn't you?" The moment the words left my mouth, the room went dead silent. "Who told you there was a DNA test?" Estelle stared me down, her lips pressed into a tight line. The look in her eyes made it clear, if I so much as hinted that my memory had come back, she'd be ready to do whatever it took to shut me up. After a few seconds of silence, I played it cool and shrugged. "Just overheard some people talking. Found out I was part of it too." "So what did it say?" Estelle relaxed visibly. "I checked it for you. You're not a match." She seemed to think I was getting above myself, because her tone shifted into something almost preachy. "Don't get any wild ideas. Better to keep your feet on the ground." She grabbed my shoulders and looked at me with exaggerated seriousness. "Nick, you know what I've always loved about you? You're not vain. You're not like other guys. So let's just focus on our own life and stop chasing things that have nothing to do with us." I stared back at her coldly, scoffing inside. I couldn't wrap my head around how someone could be so shameless. After stealing my identity, she still had the nerve to tear me down like I was worthless. In my past life, she'd sweet-talked me into signing the marriage papers, and within months, she was off to Neller City. My dream of having a wedding kept getting pushed back, year after year. Eventually, I took the cheapest train I could find and went looking for her. Instead, I walked in on her wedding to Derek. I tried to storm in and confront her, but security dragged me out and locked me in a dog crate. Afterwards, Estelle showed not a shred of remorse, she just pointed at my head and tore into me. "Why do you have to make my life so miserable? I've been keeping you fed and housed back home, why can't you just be grateful? I'm trying to climb up in the world, isn't that for our family too? You've never done a thing to help this family. Stop dragging me down." She tore me to pieces, then tossed me a few $100 like a consolation prize. Slap on the cheek, candy in the mouth. And I let her send me back home in a daze, too beaten down to fight back. Now, Estelle seemed to think she'd talked me into line again. She turned around and started packing my things. "Hospitals are too expensive. You don't have much savings anyway, better to save that for our future house. Let's go home for now, and once we're..." "Don't bother. I'm staying a few more days. And don't come see me anymore." I cut her off mid-sentence and reached for my suitcase. Estelle's grip tightened, her face darkening. "What are you trying to say? Nick, why are you being so difficult all of a sudden? I'm doing this for your own good. Once your memory comes back, you'll understand. Besides, you don't have a penny to your name, what's there to be afraid of?" Her ugly side was starting to show, the old pattern of twisting my head around. But I wasn't the same Nick she used to push to the breaking point. I just took my suitcase back and said calmly, "I don't know you. Don't come back." Estelle's mind seemed to short-circuit. Her face went even paler. "What are you saying? Are you breaking up with me?" I gave a slight nod. "You can put it that way." Just then, the door swung open, and Derek rushed in, looking frantic. "Nick, what's going on? Why would you break up out of nowhere? You two were about to get married." I didn't answer him. Instead, I held up my phone, showing a recent charge notification. Did you use this? His face froze. He touched his freshly permed hair and threw an arm around my shoulder, all buddy-buddy. You probably don't remember, but we're tight, man. You've always been super generous. Heh, don't sweat the small stuff, right? Cash or transfer? They both blinked at me, confused. What? I pulled my arm free and pulled up my banking app. Cash or transfer? I repeated. Derek's eyes went red on the spot, like he was the one who'd been wronged. Estelle's face twisted. She lunged forward and grabbed for my phone, furious. Nick, are you that obsessed with money? You have the nerve to ask for a few dozen bucks. I shoved her hand off and shot back coldly. What is he, a beggar? A few dozen is still money. If you're so generous, you pay me back. That's enough. Derek suddenly yelled, glaring at me with pure contempt. Let me tell you the truth, I'm the heir of the Astor family. When my parents get here tomorrow, forget a few dozen, I could give you hundreds. Thousands. You're nothing but a pathetic loser. Who are you to humiliate me? With that, he shoved past me and ran out. Estelle's face darkened as she snapped at me, happy now? You really did hit your head. Now nobody's happy. Just pack your things and come with me. I said I'm not leaving. What are you even staying for? Are you determined to ruin everything for everyone else? Estelle's voice cracked as she screamed, then she froze mid-sentence. I stared at her coldly and sneered, what exactly am I supposed to be ruining? None of your business. Just come with me. Estelle deflected, flustered and angry. I'm not going. If you try to drag me out, I'll call the police. The room went deathly quiet. Her face turned ashen. She gritted her teeth, nodded once, then slammed the door behind her. I let out a breath. Tomorrow, when my parents arrived, I'd expose Derek's lie. No one was going to steal my life from me. But I hadn't counted on what happened the next morning. The door burst open with a crash. Estelle's father and a bunch of his relatives charged in, grabbed my wrists, and started hauling me out. Their nails dug into my skin, and I broke out in a cold sweat from the pain. I fought back hard. Let go of me. Let go. Get off. A crowd gathered fast. When someone tried to step in, Estelle's father put on a weepy act. This is my son. He lost his memory and doesn't recognize me anymore. He's an orphan, we raised him on our own dime, every meal we could spare. The Good Samaritan backed off and scolded me, they've been so good to you. Don't be ungrateful. I was frantic, shouting back, he's lying. I never spent a penny of their money. In fact, after he was paralyzed, I'd taken care of him for decades, and he'd beat me and cursed me out over every little thing. Then Estelle jumped out of a beat-up van, her face dark, and shoved me toward it. She clamped her hand over my mouth while Estelle's father tied me up with rope. Through the window, I saw a black sedan pull up slowly. My parents, the ones I remembered, stepped out and hurried toward the hospital entrance. Watching them get farther and farther away, my heart raced. I clenched my teeth and bit down hard on Estelle's hand. Ah! She screamed in pain. I kicked Estelle's father square in the chest, broke free, and stumbled out of the van. Nick, stop right there. Estelle chased after me like a ghost. I didn't dare slow down. Gasping for air, I weaved through the crowd. Up ahead, I saw Derek sobbing into my mother's arms. Estelle's face went purple with rage. She wrapped her arm around my throat and tried to drag me back. My blood pounded in my ears. I dug my nails into the wound on her hand. The moment she loosened her grip, I screamed with everything I had. Mom, Dad, I'm your real son. My voice cut through the damp morning air of the hospital courtyard like a blade. For a second, the entire world seemed to halt. The bustling nurses, the patients. In wheelchairs, the security guards, everyone froze. At the center of the courtyard, the elegant middle-aged couple stopped dead in their tracks. The woman, Eleanor Astor, slowly let go of Derek. Her eyes, clouded with years of unshed tears, drifted past him. She looked at me, shivering. In a hospital gown, my wrists raw and bleeding from the ropes Estelle's father had used, my hair wild, and my face pale. Derek's face drained of color. The smug, tear-streaked warmth on his face instantly solidified into sheer terror. He tightened his grip on Eleanor's arm, his voice rising in a panicked pitch. Mom. Don't listen to him. That's Nick Dalton, he's my friend from the orphanage. He got into a terrible car accident a few days ago. The doctor said he has severe brain damage. He's completely lost his mind. Yes. He's crazy. Estelle's voice shrieked from behind me. She lunged forward, her fingers clawing at my shoulder to pull me back toward the beat-up van. I'm so sorry, everyone. My fiancé had a head injury. He doesn't know what he's saying. Dad, help me get him back in. Her paralyzed father, miraculously agile enough to scramble out of the passenger seat, grabbed my arm. Come on, son, let's go back to the ward. Don't embarrass us in front of these wealthy folks. The crowd began to whisper. Ah, poor boy. A car accident. No wonder he's yelling nonsense. Brain damage is no joke. I felt the familiar, suffocating trap closing in on me. In my past life, this was exactly how they did it. They isolated me, made me doubt my own sanity, and used that accident as an excuse to keep me locked away in the countryside while Derek lived my life. Not today. With a surge of adrenaline fueled by 30 years of stored-up hatred, I threw my weight backward, slamming my elbow into Estelle's father's chest. He gasped and stumbled back. I yanked my arm out of Estelle's grip, leaving a trail of her own blood on my skin where I had bitten her. Eleanor. Arthur. I screamed their names directly, ignoring the gasps of the onlookers. Look at my shoulder. Look at my left collarbone. Eleanor Astor gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Arthur Astor, a tall, imposing man with sharp gray eyes, narrowed his gaze. What did you say? Arthur's voice was deep, carrying the immense weight of a man who ruled a business empire. He pushed Derek's hand off his wife's arm and took 3 steps toward me. Arthur, don't let this madman near us. Derek pleaded, his voice cracking. Security. Where is the security? Get him away. The boy we lost had a crescent-shaped burn mark on his left collarbone, Arthur said, his eyes locked on mine, ignoring Derek entirely. How do you know about that? It was never made public. Because I got it when I was 3 years old, when the nanny dropped a hot kettle in the kitchen of our old house in Neller City, I said, my voice shaking. But clear. And you, Dad, you carried me to the hospital in your arms. You ran through 3 red lights and got a ticket. You still keep that ticket in your study's desk drawer because you said it reminded you of the day you almost lost me. Eleanor let out a strangled sob. She broke away from Derek and ran toward me. Eleanor, wait. Arthur called out, but his own steps quickened. Don't touch him. He's dangerous. Estelle screamed, throwing herself in front of Eleanor. Ma'am, please, he's my fiancé. He's just confused because Derek told him about your family's history yesterday. He's trying to scam you. Estelle was desperate. Her face was twisted in a mixture of fear and fury. She knew that if I stepped into the light, her golden ticket to Neller City, her dream of being a wealthy socialite beside Derek, would vanish into thin air. I looked at Estelle, my eyes cold as ice. I scammed them? Estelle, if I'm your fiancé, why did you swap my DNA test results yesterday morning? Why did you pick up my report under my name, Nick Dalton, and hand it to Derek? You're lying. I didn't, she shrieked. The hospital has security cameras, I said, turning to Arthur Astor. Mr. Astor, you have the power. Have your people check the pediatric and pathology wing CCTV from yesterday morning at 8 a.m. You'll see Estelle Camden picking up my file. Then check the trash cans or the restroom logs. She switched the names on the reports. Derek's knees buckled. He actually stumbled sideways, catching himself on the side of the Astor's black luxury sedan. Arthur Astor looked back at Derek. The warmth that had been in his eyes moments ago was gone, replaced by the calculating, terrifying coldness of a billionaire tycoon. He looked at Derek's trembling hands, his sweat-drenched forehead, and the sheer guilt written all over his face. Derek, Arthur said softly, though the tone was like dry ice. Is there something you want to tell me? Dad. She's lying, he's lying. Derek stammered, his voice climbing an octave. We grew up in the same orphanage. He's always been jealous of me. He stole my things when we were kids, and now he wants to steal my parents. He stole your things? I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Derek, let's talk about the silver pocket watch with the initials, AA, engraved on the back. The one you found in your locker when we were 12. The one you sold to a pawn shop down the street for $50 to buy video games. Who did that watch belong to? Eleanor's eyes went wide. That was my father's watch. We put it in our baby's crib the day he was taken. She looked at Derek, her expression turning from confusion to utter horror. You sold it? No, I didn't. Derek screamed, pointing at me. He's making things up. He's trying to ruin me. Mr. Astor, I said, ignoring Derek's hysterical shouting. If you don't believe me, we don't need to argue. You brought your own medical team with you from Neller City, didn't you? Your private doctor always travels with you because of your heart condition. Arthur's eyebrows shot up. This was another private detail. Yes, Arthur said slowly. Dr. Vance is in the second car. Run the test again. Right here. Right now, I said, stepping forward, ignoring the throbbing pain in my head. Take my blood. Take Derek's blood. Let Dr. Vance supervise it personally. Don't let anyone from this hospital, or Estelle, touch the samples. If I am not your son, I will walk into the police station myself and confess to fraud. No. Estelle cried out, her voice cracking. Nick, how can you do this to me? We've been together for 7 years. Are you really going to abandon me and my father for money? You've changed. You're not the Nick I loved. She tried to play the emotional card, weeping openly, trying to appeal to the crowd's sense of morality. She wanted to make me look like a gold digger who was abandoning his loyal, long-term girlfriend the moment a rich family appeared. But I wasn't the gullible fool from my past life. 7 years, Estelle? I asked, walking slowly toward her. The crowd parted around me. 7 years of what? 7 years of me working 3 jobs to pay for your college tuition while you told everyone I was just your distant cousin. Because you were ashamed of me? 7 years of me washing your underwear by hand. Because you said using the washing machine wasted electricity? 7 years of me eating your leftovers while you and Derek went out to fancy restaurants on my dime? The whispers in the crowd changed instantly. Wait, what? He paid for her college? She kept him as a servant? Estelle's face turned from pale to a deep, ugly purple. You're making things up. You love doing those things. You said you wanted to take care of me. I said those things because you gaslit me into believing I was worthless, I said, my voice dropping to a harsh whisper that only she, Derek, and my parents could hear. You told me I was an orphan who deserved nothing. You told me I should be grateful a pretty girl like you even looked at me. But the truth is, you knew who I was. You knew my parents were looking for me. You kept me down so you could raise Derek up. Enough, Arthur Astor's voice boomed, silencing everyone. He turned to his head bodyguard, a mountain of a man in a black suit. Leon. Call Dr. Vance. Bring the rapid DNA testing kit from the mobile lab. Secure both of these young men. Nobody leaves this courtyard. Yes, Mr. Astor, Leon replied, immediately stepping forward. He signaled to 3 other security guards. Within seconds, Derek and I were surrounded. Derek looked around wildly, his eyes darting toward the hospital gates. He actually made a move to run, but Leon's heavy hand clapped down on his shoulder, pinning him to the spot like a butterfly on a board. Let me go. You can't do this. This is kidnapping. Derek screamed, losing all his composure. Beside him, Estelle looked like she was about to faint. She looked at Derek. Then at me. For the first time, a flicker of genuine panic and regret flashed through her eyes. But it wasn't regret for how she treated me, it was the panic of a gambler who realized they had bet everything on the wrong horse. The hospital's VIP lounge was cleared out within minutes. Arthur Astor's money and influence made the hospital administration highly cooperative. I sat on a leather sofa, a nurse gently cleaning the wounds on my wrists. Across from me sat Derek, who was shaking so violently his teeth were chattering. Estelle and her father were kept in the hallway under the watchful eyes of Arthur's security team. Dr. Vance, a dignified older man with white hair, set up a sterile field on the coffee table. He drew blood from my arm first, then turned to Derek. I don't want to do this, Derek whimpered, pulling his arm back. Arthur. Eleanor, please. I'm your son. Don't let them do this to me. It's humiliating. Eleanor Astor sat on the edge of her seat, her eyes fixed on me. She didn't even look at Derek. The maternal instinct she had suppressed for decades was screaming at her. She saw the shape of my nose, the way I held my shoulders, the exact shade of my eyes that looked just like her late father's. Draw the blood, Dr. Vance, Arthur said coldly. One of the bodyguards grabbed Derek's arm, holding it still. Derek let out a pathetic yelp as the needle went in. The rapid PCR analyzer will take approximately 45 minutes to run the genetic markers, Dr. Vance explained, placing the vials into a sleek, portable machine. It is 100% accurate. The wait was agonizingly silent. Eleanor slowly stood up and walked over to me. She ignored my dirty hospital gown and the faint smell of antiseptic. She sat down beside me, her trembling hand reaching out to touch my cheek. Your name is Nick, she whispered, her voice cracking. My name is Nicholas Astor, I said softly, the tears finally spilling over my eyelashes. But the orphanage changed it to Nick Dalton. I remembered everything when I woke up from the accident, Mom. Hearing the word Mom, Eleanor broke down. She wrapped her arms around my neck, pulling me into a tight embrace. She wept into my shoulder, her body shaking. Arthur walked over, his eyes red. He placed a heavy, warm hand on my shoulder. If you are indeed Nicholas. We have searched for you for 22 years. We never stopped looking. I know, I murmured, burying my face in my mother's shoulder. I know. Across the room, Derek watched this scene with a face full of venom. He's acting. He's a dirty actor. He just wants your money. Arthur, Eleanor, don't let him trick you. Shut up, Arthur snapped, not even turning his head. Outside the glass doors of the VIP lounge, I could see Estelle pacing back and forth. She kept trying to look inside, her hands pressed against the glass. I looked at her through the window. 30 years. In my past life, I spent 30 years serving this woman. I remembered the cold winters in the countryside, my hands covered in chilblains as I washed her father's soiled sheets in freezing water. I remembered her coming back once every 3 years, looking at me with disgust, tossing a few crumpled bills onto the table like she was feeding a stray dog. And I remembered her words on my deathbed, Derek is handsome and clever. He deserves the good life way more than you do. A cold, calm satisfaction washed over me. The wheel of fate had turned, and this time, I was the one holding the axle. Beep. 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 The rapid PCR analyzer let out a sharp series of tones. The room went dead quiet. Dr. Vance stood up, walked over to the machine, and printed out 2 sheets of paper. He reviewed them quickly, his face expressionless, though his eyebrows twitched slightly. He walked over to Arthur and Eleanor, handing them the sheets. Mr. and Mrs. Astor, Dr. Vance said, his voice clear and steady. The genetic comparison is conclusive. The sample belonging to Nick Dalton shares a 99.99% maternal and paternal match with both of you. He is, without a doubt, your biological son, Nicholas. Eleanor let out a cry of joy and hugged me even tighter, sobbing uncontrollably. Arthur's face flushed with emotion. He closed his eyes, a single tear escaping and rolling down his cheek. My boy, my Nicholas, Arthur whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Dr. Vance then turned his gaze to Derek, his eyes cold. As for the sample belonging to Derek Willis, there is a 0% genetic match. He has absolutely no biological relation to the Astor family. No, no. That's impossible. The machine is broken. Derek shrieked. He stood up, knocking his chair over, and tried to grab the papers from Arthur's hands. Before he could even touch them, Leon grabbed him by the collar, slammed him onto the floor, and pinned his arms behind his back. Let me go. It was Estelle. She did it. Derek began to scream, completely breaking down. He pointed toward the door. She came to me 2 days ago. She said Nick's DNA matched, but she didn't want him to have the money. She said Nick was too stupid to handle being rich and that I should take his place. She's the one who swapped the files. I didn't want to do it, I swear. She forced me. Through the glass door, Estelle heard him. Her eyes went wide, and she took a step back, terrified. Arthur Astor slowly turned around. The raw emotion on his face vanished, replaced by the terrifying, icy demeanor of a man who could crush lives with a single phone call. Leon, Arthur said, his voice quiet but echoing in the silent room. Call the police. Report a case of identity theft, fraud, extortion, and kidnapping. Actually, call our lead counsel, Mr. Sterling. Tell him I want these 2 prosecuted to the absolute limit of the law. No bail. No deals. Right away, sir, Leon said, pulling Derek up by his collar like a sack of trash. The door to the VIP lounge opened, and Estelle tried to push her way in, her face covered in tears. Nick, please. She begged, throwing herself to her knees at my feet. I did it for us. I swear. I knew that if you went to Neller City, those wealthy people would look down on you. I wanted to protect you. I thought if Derek took the heat, we could live a quiet, happy life together in the countryside. I love you, Nick. Please, tell your parents to stop this. I looked down at her. Her beautiful face, which had once been my entire world, now looked incredibly ugly to me. The tears she shed were not of love or remorse, they were the tears of a parasite that had just lost its host. You wanted to protect me? I asked, my voice incredibly calm. By forcing me back to your hometown? By making me take care of your abusive father for the rest of my life while you lived in luxury in the city with Derek? Estelle choked on her breath, her eyes widening in horror. How do you? She had never told me about her plans to go to Neller City with Derek. In this timeline, she hadn't even mentioned it yet. I know everything, Estelle, I whispered, leaning down so only she could hear. I know about the wedding you had with Derek in Neller City. I know about the dog crate your security guards locked me in. And I remember every single word you said to me on my deathbed. Her eyes dilated with absolute, paralyzing terror. She looked at me like she was looking at a ghost. You. She stammered, her voice trembling. Take them away, Arthur ordered. The security guards dragged Derek and Estelle out of the room. Estelle's father tried to protest, but a single cold look from Arthur's bodyguard shut him up. Instantly. As they were dragged down the hallway, their screams of desperation faded, leaving only the quiet hum of the hospital's air conditioning. I looked at my parents. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I felt a deep, genuine sense of warmth and safety. Let's go home, Nicholas, my father said, offering me his hand. Yes, I said, taking his hand. Let's go home. The transition from a broke, memory-wiped orphan to the sole heir of the Astor conglomerate was dizzying, but my mind was 30 years older than my physical body. I wasn't the naive young man they expected. Within a week of arriving in Neller City, I was settled into the Astor estate, a sprawling, elegant mansion nestled in the hills overlooking the city. My parents spared no expense. They brought in the best doctors to treat my head injury, the finest tailors to replace my worn-out clothes, and private tutors to help me catch up on the education I had missed. But they quickly realized I didn't need much catching up. Nicholas, Arthur said one evening during dinner, looking at me with a mixture of pride and curiosity. Your tutor tells me you picked up advanced corporate finance in 3 days. And your mannerisms. You don't act like someone who grew up in an orphanage. I smiled gently, cutting a piece of steak. I read a lot of books in the orphanage library, father. And perhaps, the accident made my mind sharper. When you lose everything, you learn to observe people very closely. Eleanor smiled, placing her hand over mine. It doesn't matter how or why. You are here now. That is all that matters. What about the legal proceedings? I asked, my tone turning serious. Arthur's expression darkened slightly. Derek Willis and Estelle Camden are currently held in custody. The evidence of DNA tampering and fraud is overwhelming. My legal team has ensured that the local authorities are treating this with the utmost seriousness. They are looking at 15 to 20 years. For grand larceny, identity theft, and conspiracy. 15 to 20 years? I murmured. Is that not enough, son? Arthur asked, concerned. If you want, I can make sure they get the maximum penalty. No, father. It's enough, I said. But in my heart, I knew that prison was too easy for them. I wanted them to experience the slow, suffocating despair they had subjected me to in my past life. I wanted them to watch the life they dreamed of slip away, inch by inch, while they were completely powerless to stop it. I want to visit them, I said. My parents exchanged a worried look. Nicholas, those people are toxic, Eleanor said gently. Why drag yourself back into their mud? I need closure, Mom, I said, using the word that always made her heart melt. I want to look them in the eye one last time, so I can truly leave the past behind. Arthur nodded slowly. Very well. I will arrange it. The visitation room of the detention center was cold and smelled of damp concrete and cheap disinfectant. I sat behind the thick glass partition, wearing a bespoke charcoal suit that fit my broad shoulders perfectly. My hair was neatly styled, and my skin, no longer pale and sickly, had a healthy glow. I looked every bit the billionaire heir I was born to be. The heavy iron door on the other side opened, and Derek was led in by a guard. He looked terrible. His freshly permed hair was a matted, greasy mess. He had a black eye, likely from a disagreement with his cellmates, and his orange jumpsuit hung loosely on his gaunt frame. The arrogant, smug air of the Astor family had completely vanished. When he saw me, his eyes flared with a mixture of intense jealousy and desperate hope. He grabbed the phone on his side of the partition. I slowly picked up mine. Nick, buddy. Derek pleaded, his voice cracking. You have to help me. Please. We grew up together. You know I'm not a bad guy. It was all Estelle. She manipulated me. She told me she'd break up with me if I didn't go along with it. She's the devil, Nick. Is she? I asked, my voice calm, devoid of any anger. Derek, do you remember? When we were 14, and a wealthy donor gave the orphanage a beautiful, leather-bound journal? I loved to write in it. The next day, it was gone. I found it in your bag, but when I confronted you, you threw it in the mud and stepped on it, saying a loser like me didn't deserve to have nice things. Derek froze, his mouth open. You always thought you were better than me, I continued, leaning forward. Slightly. Even when we were kids, you stole my clothes, my toys, my food. And when the ultimate prize came, my entire life, you didn't hesitate for a single second to steal that too. I was wrong, Nick. I was just jealous. Derek wept, pressing his hand against the glass. Please, tell your father to drop the charges. I'll do anything. I'll be your servant. I'll clean your shoes. Just don't let me rot in here. You know, Derek, I said, looking at him with pity. In another life, I was the one who ended up in worn-out clothes, looking at you in your luxury sports car. You looked at me like I was carrying a plague. You told me I was a country bumpkin and that this was my lot in life. Derek's eyes went wide with confusion. What are you talking about? When did I say that? It doesn't matter, I said, slowly putting the phone down. Enjoy your lot in life, Derek. Nick, don't hang up. Nick, he screamed, banging on the glass. The guard quickly grabbed him, twisting his arm behind his back and dragging him out of the room. Next was Estelle. When she entered, she looked even worse than Derek. Her skin was sallow, and her eyes were bloodshot. She had always prided herself on her looks, using them to manipulate the men around her. Now, without makeup and wearing a prison uniform, she looked completely ordinary, the very thing she hated most. She sat down and picked up the phone. Her hand was shaking. Nick, she whispered. Are you happy now? You've ruined my life. You've ruined my father's life. I ruined your life? I asked, a faint smile playing on my lips. Estelle, you swapped my DNA test. You tried to kidnap me from the hospital. You tried to force me into a life of indentured servitude to take care of your father while you enjoyed my family's wealth. And you say I ruined your life? We could have been happy, she cried out. If you didn't care so much about money, we could have lived a simple life. I would have married you eventually. Eventually? After you got tired of sleeping with Derek in Neller City? I asked. Estelle gasped, her face turning completely white. How? How do you know about that? We never. I know everything, Estelle, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I know that you never loved me. I was just a safety net to you. A dog you kept on a leash to do your chores and keep you warm until you found a better master. She stared at me, her lips trembling. You're a monster. You're not the Nick I knew. The Nick you knew died in a hospital bed, choked with fury and spitting up blood, I said, my eyes locking onto hers. I am Nicholas Astor. And I promise you, Estelle, I will make sure the prosecutors use every single resource at my family's disposal to keep you in that cell for a very, very long time. I stood up, adjusting my suit jacket. Nick. No. Please, she screamed, tears streaming down her face. Don't leave me here. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't look back. I hung up the phone, walked out of the visitation room, and stepped into the warm, bright sunlight of Neller City. The legal battle that followed was swift and merciless. With the Astor family's immense wealth and influence, the prosecution had access to the best forensic investigators. They uncovered a paper trail of text messages between Estelle and Derek planning the swap weeks before the DNA results even came out. They had been tracking the Astor family's search for their lost son, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The media caught wind of the story. Headlines like "Billionaire Heir Swapped at Birth," "The Shocking Conspiracy," and "The False Heir Exposed" dominated the news. 4 weeks. Derek and Estelle's faces were plastered across every newspaper and social media platform. They were publicly ruined before they even stepped foot in the courtroom. During the trial, Estelle's father, who had put on a paralyzed, helpless act for years to guilt me into taking care of him, was exposed. A medical evaluation ordered by the court revealed that while he had mobility issues, he was fully capable of walking and caring for himself. He had been exaggerating his condition for decades to keep me bound to their family as a free servant. The court sentenced Derek Willis to 18 years in a maximum security prison for grand fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Estelle Camden was sentenced to 15 years for her role as the mastermind. behind the conspiracy, along with additional charges of attempted kidnapping and assault for her actions at the hospital. Her father was fined heavily for his involvement, forcing them to sell their family home in the countryside to pay the legal fees. He was left with nothing. Forced into a cheap, state-run nursing home, the very fate he had tried to force upon me. On the day of the sentencing, I stood outside the courthouse. The press surrounded me, microphones thrust into my face. Mr. Astor, how do you feel about the verdict? Do you have anything to say to the people who stole your life? I looked into the camera, my expression calm and dignified. Justice has been served, I said clearly. I harbor no hatred. I only hope that this serves as a reminder that the truth always finds a way to the light. No matter how deep you bury it, and no matter how many lies you tell to protect it. With that, I turned and walked toward my parents' waiting limousine. Arthur and Eleanor were waiting inside, their faces full of warmth and love. 2 years later, the grand ballroom of the Astor Hotel in Neller City was filled with the city's elite. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and classical music drifted through the air. Today was the annual charity gala hosted by the Astor Group, and as the newly appointed executive vice president, I was the host. I stood near the balcony, a glass of champagne in my hand, looking out over the glittering city skyline. Over the past 2 years, I had worked tirelessly to earn my place. I didn't just rely on my name, I used the knowledge and maturity of my past life to make brilliant investment decisions, earning the respect of the board of directors and the media alike. Nicholas, a soft voice called out. I turned to see my mother, Eleanor, looking beautiful in a deep blue evening gown. She walked over, her eyes filled with a pride that never seemed to fade. You're hiding out here again, she said with a gentle laugh. The board members are waiting to introduce you to the new foreign investors. Just taking a moment to appreciate how far we've come, Mom, I said, offering her a warm smile. She took my arm, leaning her head against my shoulder for a brief moment. We are so proud of you, Nicholas. Every single day. Thank you, Mom. As we walked back into the warmth and light of the ballroom, I took one last look at the dark night sky. In my past life, my story ended in a cold, dark room, filled with regret and bitterness. But this time, I had rewritten the stars. The parasites were gone, locked away in the shadows where they belonged, and I was finally living the life that was always meant to be mine. The music swelled, and I stepped into the light, ready to face the future.